YouTube, welcome back to my channel. I am Taylor, and this is my review of The Death Ray. By Dan Clowes. Clowes? I don't know. Pronouncing names is hard. Yeah, let's get into it. And also, stay tuned before I forget till the end of the video to see who won last week's giveaway. Die Volume 2 Split the Party. I'd tell you now, but then you're just going to watch this and then stop watching the rest. And I need the views and I need the view hours, and I want you to actually watch my reviews, people, so I can get viewers and do all these things and plans and schemes and whatnot and what have you. Also, I'm not giving this one away. This is my personal collection. I've owned it since about 2011. It is beat to hell. And I just found it in a box of stuff. So you can't have it. You have to get your own. Haha! So that'll stop people from watching this too. Anyway, yeah, this comic. Okay, a little bit of backstory. Dan Clowes is the writer and artist of 8 Ball, which is an underground comic, I think mostly printed by Fantagraphics, maybe entirely by Fantagraphics. It had 23 issues, I believe, and this is basically a reprinting of issue 23. And it went for about 15 years. He was not a quick worker, but each of these issues of 8 Ball, if you can find them, are fantastic and worth reading. They're sad and twisted and lonely and coming of age, and there's some themes that run through his work, and I'll touch on that a bit. But yeah, if you've ever watched the movie Ghost World, that's based on an issue of 8 Ball, and yeah, I still think it's one of the best comic book movies ever made. So that's just my opinion. Yours may vary, and if so, you've probably been wrong before. Okay, so this was originally printed, as I said, in 8 Ball number 23, which I believe is the last issue of 8 Ball. And it came out in 2004. It's a big old reprinting, which I think is great because the original comics are smaller than this, and it really benefits from this size upgrade. And the paper quality is really nice. It's a matte paper, like a sort of thick, not quite cardstock, but it's not like the traditional glossy comic paper that things are normally printed on nowadays. And yeah, the quality of this reproduction, if you can find it, and you can, it's on eBay, you can get it for like 10 to 15 bucks, and I don't know if it's still in print, but you can get it fairly cheap. And it's a fairly quick read. I mean, it's not, I don't know, what's the page count on this? It's, let's see if there are no page numbers. Thank you, Dan, for making my life difficult. But, oh no, there are 42 pages. So it clocks in at 40. It's a brief read, more so than a lot of what I review, but just wanted to talk about this one this week. It's yeah, Dan Clowes writes a lot about loneliness and adolescence and unlikable characters dealing with the fact that they're unlikable, and not a lot of them are self-aware of their unlikability. They just think the rest of the world is askew, and that's a theme that pervades some of his work, and that pervades this comic as well. The main character is not a very nice person when it gets all said and done to it. His name's Andy, and it starts with Andy in his 40s looking back on life as an adolescent. And there's going to be some spoilers from here on out. Andy's parents are both deceased from cancer, and he lives with his grandparent, or his grandpa. And he doesn't. And his grandpa has a helper named Dinah, and Dinah plays into this. Andy has a crush on Dinah, and it kind of where that gets resolved in this book. And the grandpa is losing his facilities. He's declining both physically and mentally. And Andy doesn't have any friends. He meets a guy named Louis. They become friends, but Louis is not a very nice person either. And so it's two unfriendly, unlikable, nice kids in high school. And that's the majority of this story. And it breaks the fourth wall. Like, Andy spends a good fair amount of time, especially in the and the beginning and the end of the book, talking to the audience directly. So you get to sort of hear his read his inner monologue, as it were, and it's an interesting story. It's told in little vignettes, almost like comic strips, although they did all appear in one issue, but like it's like 1 or 2 page little things that are put together, and like together it forms this whole story, and it deals a lot with, like I said, with the loss of parents and loneliness and growing up and bullying. And I mean, it's a lot of common Dan Clowes themes. And Andy since his parents died of cancer, his promise never to smoke, although Louis talks him into smoking, and because of that, he maybe gets superpowers and becomes the Death Ray, and finds this Death Ray that his dad left him, where he can kill people with the Death Ray. It's twisted. It's very of its time. Like indie comics in the 90s and 2000s, a lot of them tend to be very personal, small stories, and this is a personal, small story, even though the book is large. Nowadays, the indie comics still seem to be like mainstream comics with character creations. That's not what was going on in this time period on the whole. It was like more personal, more introspective, more self-involved, I guess, as it were, stories. And that's kind of the way this falls in. Anyways, Andy's not a likable person, really, and Louis talks him into using this Death Ray to kill bullies and anyone that Louis doesn't like, and people, and it all spirals from there. And there is a resolution of sorts, and Andy does survive. That's the spoiler, but there's not a happy ending. Dan Clowes does not have a lot of happy endings. He has endings. He has resolution, but the character still remains fairly unlikable. But it's a sad, melancholy story under the guy that like has a lot of influence in like 40s and 50s superhero comics, as well as the indie 90s and 2000s when it was written. And it's bitter. Like it leaves this taste in your mouth, this like kind of acerbic taste, where you're like, ugh. But I mean, it makes you feel the feels, and you read it, you're like, God damn, that's not a likable person. Like, man, that's awful. And like, there's a lot of people behaving badly and treating each other badly in this, and it can be a hard thing to read, but I think it's an important thing. And I know a lot of current comic creators owe a lot of their influence and hold Dan Clowes in high regard. And I'm not a comic creator really, but I think Dan's brilliant. I'm on the hunt to get all of 8-Ball. I don't have any of them. I had a few issues back in the day, but they all got water damaged. And along with most of my 90s and 2000s indie comic collection, this is one of the few that sort of survived, although it is, like I said, beat to hell. Yeah, it's it's the drawing style. I haven't touched on that much, but the drawing style, he draws his characters in kind of an ugly underground way too. Like they're not generally attractive. Like I don't know if you can see that. They're just kind of fairly simplistic, but at the same time, with enough detail, you can differentiate the characters. And like the characters progress throughout here. They get haircuts and like things change and they grow and taller and stuff. And this is set. I forgot to mention that this is set in the 70s for the most part, and then in 2000 it jumps ahead to 2004 and jumps back and forth to 2004. So it's like it's an interesting one. I would highly recommend hunting it down if you can find it, or anything by Dan Clowes. He's not done his body of work is pretty much, from what I can tell, mostly the 23 issues of 8-Ball. But they've been collected into various graphic novels, like David Boring, Ghost World, Death Ray. There's a couple others I can't think of the name of, but they all, like almost all of them, have been collected elsewhere. The original, like first print of 8-Ball, gets really expensive if you because it was a fairly low print run. But it's and it does involve mature themes and sex and swearing and racism and bigotry, and it's just the characters are like I said, they're flawed characters, and he writes these characters very well, but it is painful sometimes to read. So like I said, I don't want to spoil this, everything in it. I think if you get a chance, hunt down something by Daniel Clowes at some point, because I think definitely worth reading. Oh, and I might have lied. I don't think it was Fantagraphics. It's drawn in Quarterly. I can't remember the publishers and stuff, but yeah, it's like these characters all have like the misplaced ideals, and they all think they're in the right, and they all behave that way because they think they're in the right, and and that again, it pervades a lot of Dan's work, and he's kind of a master of it. It's sort of reminiscent of Chris Ware stuff. If you've ever read any, like his Rusty Brown or the Smartest Kid on Earth, Jimmy Corrigan, Smartest Kid on Earth, reminiscent, different entirely, but still there's some overlap. They're both Chicago artists for one thing, and like there's maybe a Chicago indie school of comics. There probably is. This seems like it seems like a very Midwestern book, and maybe I'm biased on that because I lived in Chicago for a few years, and I actually lived in there around the time this was written. So yeah, I don't know. It's just more rambling than normal. I get that, and sorry, but check it out. I'm not, like I said, I'm keeping this one, and I know I said like I said like 14 times in this one. I'm working on it, folks. I'm working on it. I have these like things I save and then I repeat, and I just can't get them out of my brain sometimes. So that's about it for that one. The winner of last week's Die Volume 2 is Adrian APM. I'm going to leave his commenty thing in one of the corners. And yeah, I will hand deliver this to you next time I see you, sir. So congrats, and keep an eye out next week. I'll probably have something to give away. I know some of these I've been holding on to because, well, they mean something to me. And I think they're not crazy valuable. The trade paperbacks don't tend to be. But like, I think they're worth revisiting now and again. And this one's definitely worth revisiting for me. I'll probably read it every few years. And so I don't want to have to hunt it down again in a few years, if that makes sense. All right. Yeah, I'm going to wrap this one up. Don't be a dick, guys. And especially if you have a death ray. Don't kill people, even if other people are dicks. Just live and try not to murder while being death ray. All right. See ya.